Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG Podcast. I am Ramon Mejia here, here to bring you the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and of course author interviews. This week I have 7 new LitRPG reviews just for you folks at home. I want to give a quick shout out to our newest Patreon supporter for the podcast, Rupert Stevens, who's decided to pledge $5.99 specifically on Patreon to help support the podcast every single month. So thank you very much, Rupert, for being such a generous supporter of the podcast. We can't do the show without folks like you supporting the efforts of this podcast. But thanks, man, really. Okay, new releases and reviews. We have, again, 7 of them, including Dungeon Calamity, The Divine Dungeon Book 3. We also have Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, a LitRPG novella from Galen Wolfe. We have Desertborn, Puatera Online, Book 2. Then we have First Login, Chronicles, Book 1. After that, it'll be Dawn of the Realms. And then after that, it'll be Steel Alchemist. And last but not least, it will be Deadly Realm, Fighting for Freedom. So 7 new LitRPGs just for you folks. But before we begin those reviews, we'll begin with the LitRPG news. And in LitRPG news, we're going to begin with a nice new cover art reveal. Very pretty stuff from Blaze Corvin, author of the Delver LLC series. He's recently released an early look at the cover art for his upcoming 4th book in that series. It will be titled Golden Handcuffs. Don't expect this one anytime soon, though. Part of that announcement was the fact that he won't be starting working on this particular book until 2018, after he finishes writing and releasing the Nora Trilogy, which is 3 books set in that same Delvers LLC universe, just not with those same characters. So hopefully we'll enjoy that series as much as the Delvers LLC one. But again, very pretty cover art. Okay, next story. In a recent Facebook Live event, Alarong Kong announced that Book 7 of the Chaos Seed series would not be available and ready on November the 19th. I know, folks. I'm sad too. That particular date, he had that as a goal because it was exactly 2 years from the release of Book 1, and it was kind of special. It's just that apparently editing a plus 1,000 page novel takes longer than the regular version, which is apparently 400 or 500 pages. And so it's going to just take longer than he thought, unfortunately. But the novel apparently is done. He's just going through editing with everybody. He says he's almost 100% sure that it will be ready by December the 3rd. So I'm going to adjust that particular spot on the upcoming LitRPG from November the 19th to December the 3rd. So there we go. Also, this one's kind of fun. It was almost a little bit last minute, but I'm hoping it's going to be fun. This weekend, I'll be hosting a LitRPG author game session with myself, Charles Dean, James Hunter, Dakota Kraut, Blaze Corbin, and Hugo Huesca, who are playing some fun games. We're going to be doing it on YouTube Live, also Google Hangout Live. It's the same program. I have a link in the show notes if you guys want to just click on it and set yourself a reminder or something on your YouTube page or whatever you want to use it. But it's going to be this Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So whatever that means for you, wherever you happen to be living at. But again, it's going to be a live event. We're hoping to have a nice audience participation, asking questions. The plan for now is basically going to have a couple rounds of some games and then about 30 minutes for audience questions at the end and an opportunity for the authors to talk about the things that they're working on currently or have, they want to kind of promote a little bit. But that'll also be the opportunity for the audience to ask any author questions that they have for them while they're all in the same chat room. We can even have questions about general topics that each author can, put their 2 cents in about if you want. But I'm really looking forward. It seems like it's going to be fun, hopefully. Cross my fingers. And hope to see you on Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time or, whatever it is for you. Okay, that's it for LitRPG News. We have a few books that have come out this week. Haven't reviewed them yet, but they're out. I want to make sure you guys know about them, including Bloody Crucible and also Harmon Cooper's The Last War of Unigaea. Also, The Conduit is out as well, and is Shattered Lands Book 3. I'm not going to be reviewing that one. I didn't really like Book 1, and I skipped Book 2, and I can't read Book 3 without reading Book 2. My brain just won't let me do that, so just letting you know it's out there though. Okay, some new stuff in audiobooks that have come out this week. Some if you're in audiobooks and LitRPG, this is definitely your section. This includes The Curse of Rion Castle, Neuro Series Book 2, that's out as an audiobook. The Laboratory of Futuristic Dungeon Core, out as an audiobook as well, as is Infinite Reality Daggerland Online, Book 1. And of course, we have the links to our reviews for the ebook versions of all those audiobooks in the show notes if you want to remind yourself what scores we gave them. Okay, in upcoming LitRPG, this is just where I read off all the titles that I know about that are have scheduled for future releases. Please feel free to skip ahead if you're not interested. On the 17th of November, it'll be Book 2 in the Futuristic Dungeon Core series called The Airship. Also on the 20th of November, it'll be Under the Black Flag, Pharaoh Book 6. On the 22nd of November, it'll be Eden's Gate, The Sands. On the 23rd of November, it'll be Wounded Legion, a mech LitRPG, Armored Souls Book 2. On the 29th of November, it'll be The Gods of the Second World, The Weirdest Noob Book 3. On the 30th of November, it'll be Infinite Assassin's Daggerlands Online, Book 2. Then on December the 1st, the authors let me know that he'll be hopefully be putting out the Slime Dungeon Chronicles book number, I want to say this is 4, I think it is. I think I forgot which number it was, but the latest book in the Slime Dungeon Chronicles. Also on December the 3rd now, it is going to be the Predators, the Chaos Seeds book number 7 from Alaron Kong. On December the 4th, it'll be the Twilight Obelisk, Mirror World Book 4. December the 13th, Desert Storm, Puatera Online Book 3. On January the 17th, it'll be the Dark Herbalist Book 3, The Trap for the Potentate. There you go. And on January 24th of 2018, it is me, The Reapers, The Neuro Book 3. So there we go. That's everything I know about, including up until next year. So on to new releases and reviews. Okay, in new releases and reviews, good news this week. Everything I'm reviewing is actually going to be LitRPG, so there are no 4s this week in the reviews. We have a couple 5s, but everything is actually LitRPG, so that's good. I'm going to start this week off with the novels that have come out that already have series, so they're book 2, 3, whatever. And then after that, I'll go into reviewing the books that are the first in their series. Okay, I'm going to begin with The Dungeon Calamity by Dakota Kraut, friend of the podcast. We've done an author interview with him. It was fun. Go check it out. This is book 3 in the Divine Dungeon series. It is 406 pages. It is $4.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. I will read you the author's description. Powerful necromancers are on the move, and Cal is caught up in the crossfire. Without his faithful wisp Danny, Cal's mind slips and he begins creating traps and monsters that go against his already loose morals. After a direct threat from an unexpected force causes Cal's mind to stabilize, he throws all of his resources into keeping his thoughts clear while he funds searches for his lost companion. When others fail him again and again, Cal decides to take matters into his own hands. Deadly occurrences remind Dale that no matter how well he does in this small community, he's still considered a weakling in the greater world. Though he continues his physical and mental training, he decides to gain strength by any means necessary, even if these decisions are killing him. So there we go. My review, basically the day it released, this actual novel is only a couple days old. The day it came out on the 15th of November. Bam, is already shooting up to number 37 in all of Amazon's paid book, and that's really impressive. Remember, it's not just in a particular category. That is out of all of Amazon's books on the paid section. So there's thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands there. And he's also, of course, hit number 1 in multiple categories as well. So he's doing really well. The numbers don't lie, folks. This is a great book. There's all the dungeon stuff that you've come to like about the series, and the storylines with Dale are actually really interesting this time around. Sometimes in these novels, because it's a dungeon core book, that focus on the dungeon is what people expect. But in this particular case, the storyline outside of the dungeon is super engaging and interesting. Like I said, the novel is great. I could not put this thing down when I started reading it. Even though it was like 3 a.m, I just had to finish it. And boy, was that ending super cool. In places, like this is a relatively long story, and some novels would have like at about the halfway point just stopped and broken them in 2 books, but this novel just uses that really cool event and as a stepping stone into more adventure, and I liked that about it. It was really fun. Like I said, the ending is great and interesting. Some people might start tearing up when they get there. Other people might be annoyed or angry, but again, it turns out well. So okay. But I can show you there's also some cool dungeon on dungeon action at the end. So like I said, really good story. Gets a score from me of 8 out of 10. That's Dungeon Calamity, the Divine Dungeon Book 3 with a score of 8 out of 10. So there we go. Okay, next one. It is going to be Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, a LitRPG novella from the Camelot book series by Galen Wolfe. Okay, this one is relatively short. It is about 90 pages. The actual Amazon listing didn't have them, didn't have the actual page count as of this recording. It is 99 cents, though. It is again available on Kindle Unlimited. I will read you the author's description. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is the second and a half book in the Camelot Overthrown LitRPG series. Instead of Sir Geralt as the hero, we have Sir Gawain in this retelling of a tale of honor and loyalty where the knights of the Round of King Arthur encounter a powerful supernatural creature who seemingly can cheat death, but at the same time ends their lives forever. The mysterious Green Knight steps out of the winter cold with his whole green holly branch and his mighty fey axe. This axe has tremendous powers and can kill most creatures in one shot. The Green Knight says it will belong to whoever is brave enough to cut off his head. Gawain is that man. The Camelot series features stories of Sir Gawain in addition to Arthurian legends and chivalry and knights retold as a LitRPG stories where the hero's courage and honor is tested time and again. So basically this is kind of a cool thing that the author did. Galen Wolfe has never been afraid to try new things in his LitRPG series. He's in the same series he's had like dungeon building, in-town building, and regular RPG stuff and player versus player stuff. Like each book has been kind of different as far as like the game mechanics that he's using to tell a story. And this particular series, the Camelot book, is no different. This is a very cool idea to do. He's taking an old Arthurian legend, a poem, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and he's again retelling it as a LitRPG story, and it's fun and it's interesting. And when I started reading it, it really did remind me of the kind of story that you would hear from old books, or like the Christmas tale. Like it felt like somebody was telling you a wonderful legend, like a wonderful story from the past. And in this case, Galen Wolfe has done a wonderful job of incorporating RPG elements into it, and I thought it was wonderfully done. The story itself, if you're already familiar with it, the story isn't changing. It's just, to me, very unique in the way that the author is adding in LitRPG elements to make it fun, to modernize it a little bit, and to make it, of course, apply towards the LitRPG community. So I had a really good time reading it. It is a short story, so it shouldn't take you too long to get through it. It's a score of 8 out of 10 from me. I had a really good time reading it. Okay, on to, and again, that's Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, 8 out of 10. Somebody asked me recently to make sure I say the name of the book title because they listen to an audiobook and sometimes they put pause for a little and they forget what I was talking about. So that's what that is. Okay, on to book number 3, Desertborn, Puatera Online, written by Don Chapman. There we go. This one is kind of, I think, a novella. It's 113 pages. It is $1.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. Short author description. With her charge Alex safely delivered, Maddie drowns her pain in a local bar, leaving later that night only to discover Alex has been beaten and robbed. His own quest failed. Politics and cash aside, she aids him. Once more they cross the desert, this time where Tremol and enemies are born. There you go. Book 1 in this series got a 6 out of 10 for me. That's not a bad score. 5 is meh, 6 is better than that, just not quite good, and 7 is good, 8 is great, 9 is like almost perfect, 10 is perfect. Okay. So the fact that I got 6 isn't necessarily bad or anything. And book 2 gets the same score, but it's for different reasons than book 1. Okay. The novel actually starts out really well. I actually enjoyed the beginning. There's some romance with the main character, and Alex, and I was okay with it. I think part of the reason I didn't like it in book 1 is that it wasn't straightforward about it. It was very emotional introspection, a lot of talking. And in this one, at least, at the beginning, it's like, Maddie realizes, oh, she's in love with Alex, and those two characters. And he returns to family. I'm like, oh, that's very cute. So I was really okay with it, because after that, it just gets right to the main adventure story. And for a while, though, it's doing really well for me. She takes Alex to get healed, and of course, they have the nice little romance scene. And in this particular novel, it seemed like there were very clear goals for the main character, which wasn't 100% the case in book one. In this case, this isn't a spoiler if you've read book one. She's trying to save the Tumul, or the dragons, in the novel. Get them some food, help them hatch their eggs. That's her goal. I mean, and there's some really interesting revelations why the main character is so special, and why she has a connection with the dragons. Some really cool stuff in there. And it was like well on its way to being a 7 out of 10. And now this is going to get a little spoilery, so if you don't want to hear spoilers about the novel or the short story, feel free to skip ahead about a minute or so. You've been warned. Okay. Then it got kind of weird. It made this weird plot twist at about the 75% mark, and it kind of came out of nowhere. And it was just such a head scratcher to me that it derailed the story a bit. And I mean, look, I know I'm a writer, and I've read some plotting books about like where things are supposed to go. And I know a lot of authors like to have like a surprise or a plot twist at the 3/4 mark, which kind of sounds like a dance move, like 3/4 twist. But besides that, but this was this really weird, like genetically modified man-eating cows are introduced to the story. And I'm like, really? Like inside of the MMO game, there's just in this desert fantasy Mad Max kind of twisty thing, suddenly there's a lab with genetically modified man-eating cows. I'm like, okay. And I get that it's a twist, and it does lead to an introduction of a cool dragon, but it really just felt like a way to delay the big resolution of the series into book 3, and so it kind of dropped my interest a little bit once I realized that's what it was kind of doing. Like I said, overall, not a bad story in particular. It's just that this really could have been good. It's just that last 25% just kind of dropped off a little bit. So that's just me. It gets a score of 6 out of 10. Again, that's Desertborn, Puatera Online, Book 2, with a score of 6 out of 10. So there you go. Okay, on to our next story. First login, Chronicle, Book 1, written by Kevin Murphy. So there you go. This one is 341 pages. It is $3.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. We'll read you the author's description. Time in a capsule. People seek out escapes through countless avenues, but when the product is extra time to live within an emerging digital world, everyone's a customer. Game capsules transport people and players to a new world where time is perceived far more slowly. Why study for 8 hours in a real world when you could get it all done in a single hour? Why work slowly? Why relax that way? Following this mentality, Chronicle has become more than a game for governments, businesses, and players alike. When Corbin Landrick, an unlucky but hardworking guy, finally gets his hand on a chronopod, he jumps headfirst into his second life. While he struggles to plant both feet firmly on the ground, in a world of magic and monsters, he finds that virtual reality is what you make of it. Okay. If you look at the cover art for this novel, it is sort of misleading. It kind of looks like a Harry Potter wand-wielding young adult novel, and it's not. It is legitimately LitRPG. There's plenty of detailed game mechanics in the story, so don't worry about that. Just, like I said, the cover just doesn't tell you any of that, unfortunately, so it's not like the best cover art in that respect. And again, this, and when I started reading this, I kind of thought that maybe it wouldn't be because of the cover art, but I'm happy to say it's better than I thought it was going to be. It's more of a daily adventure slice of life story about the adventures of the main character, Corbin Landrick, or as he's known in the game, Dakin. You follow the main character as he explores this strange new VR world where the time compression is from an 8-to-1 ratio. There are some places where the story does struggle. Like it does, especially in the beginning, it does a lot of info dumps about the game mechanics story, the history of the game, why people like the game world so much because of the time compression. Specific things that come up later in the story, like there are some fairly regular info dumps where it's just like the main character is doing something, he's like, oh, pause, here's a bunch of information, and then go on to the story. And that just is what it is. I can't say anything about it. Author's decision to do it that way. But again, it is still an entertaining adventure story. The game mechanics are solid throughout the entire story, and once the main character gets his unique class, and he finally partners up with the group. It's actually a rather fun and entertaining story. It was cool to see him grow into that character and use those new class skills, and to see how that power curve goes. For me, I had a good time reading it. It gets a score of 7 out of 10. Again, that's first login, Chronicle Book 1, with a score of 7 out of 10. There you go. Okay, on to our next story. It is going to be Dawn of the Realms of Mordred, Book 1, written by Steele Mims. Okay, this one is 294 pages, $3.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. I will read you the author's description. I remember the first day I picked up Dawns of the Realms. I remember turning to my best friend in the world, Sarah, and telling her I was finally getting to play the game of my dreams. I hadn't previously shown any skills in prophecy, so we'll chalk it down to the world having a sense of humor. 6 weeks later, I went to sleep in my bedroom after a long night of gaming, only to wake up again as my avatar within the game. From that point forward, every night I woke up as my character within Dawn of the Realms, except not just in the game, in a real, vibrant fantasy world populated with real people, and plagued by real monsters. This is the story of my first week within the realms, the friends I made, the adventures I had, and the beginnings of a story that would develop not just the game world, but my own. Okay, not a bad description, and it is fairly accurate as far as the story goes. Some people might think me saying some mean things in a second or two, but the author actually contacted me. He asked me to review the novel, and I was upfront with him. I'd read part of it already, and I told him it was not going to be a particularly great review because there are some serious issues here. And he was like, no, please review it anyways. So he knows kind of what's coming here. And to be completely honest, this author's looking for criticism, so that's what I'm going to give. The writing at the beginning of the story is kind of bad. It is. And I mean, there's just so many issues with the beginning of the story and the writing in general in the novel that it's going to be hard for a lot of people to get past that beginning. If you look at the reviews of the novel on Amazon, that is very much reflected. There are issues like, there are contradictions in tenses. There's just, this book needs an editor, et cetera, et cetera. And those are basically all true. There is not consistency in the writing as far as tenses go, and sometimes the tenses aren't even used correctly. For example, sometimes the author will talk about the past tense in present tense. He'll talk about the past rather in present tense. Other times he'll talk about the present tense or the present rather in past tense. And then sometimes just from sentence to sentence it can change. There are also some time jumps where the main character starts out in the present and then she decides to describe some history elements of the game that he's been playing, and then he might jump to a future event in the story. And it can get kind of confusing at the beginning, at least. The writing does get better as the story goes on, but it's never really great at all. And it does become a little more consistent and understandable. Either that or my brain just kind of started ignoring the issues, one or the other. But the core story of this novel is actually pretty neat. A college student is having these weird recurring dreams where he's himself inside of an MMO he's been playing on his PC. These dreams are so vivid that he explores the world for the first 3 nights. Then on the 3rd night, he accepts a quest from a pretty girl to clear the forest of rodents, and he fights the creatures and wins, only suffering minor wounds. But then when he wakes up, I think this was a cool part of it, he's actually battered and bruised, including the bite marks where the rats bit him from the dream version of that quest. And the question becomes in the story, is the main character connecting with the MMO in his dreams? Is the MMO connecting to some other parallel world, or is something else entirely happening? And that's, like I said, this is a cool story idea. And of course, bigger questions are, if he's showing injuries from the fights from his dreams, what happens if he dies in the dream? So those are all cool questions that they're answered relatively early in the novel. And that's a good portion of the novel, is exploring those questions, doing tests for the main character to see if what's happening. But once the main character starts involving his friends in the problem, it kind of turns into more of a just a regular LitRPG adventure story. The main character in his group, they get a rival, they go on some quest, they defeat the big bad at the end. Not too special. It's not bad or anything. It's just that the plot from then on is fairly standardish. Overall, like I said, the story is a little predictable. But like I said, that core idea of the story those questions that it asks, I think they're really cool, and they have a lot of potential as a premise. The end of the story ties things up very neatly. There's no like cliffhangers, but it also allows for a possibility of some cool stories to be developed there, and I like that about it. However, again, the biggest flaw is going to be the bad writing, especially at the beginning of the novel. And again, it does get a bit better. Just never, like I said, if those kind of things bother you, this is going to be unreadable to you. I would suggest, if you're at all curious about this particular novel, go pick up a sample, like download the first 10% of the novel, and you'll be able to tell very quickly if this is going to be something you can kind of get through. For me though, because of those big issues and the predictability of the plot, like I said, it's not going to be a bad score for me, but it is going to be a score of 5 out of 10. It kind of became meh for me. And again, that's Dawn of Realms, The Realms of Mordred, Book 1, with a score of 5 out of 10. So there you go. Okay, on to our next story, The Steel Alchemist by Dec Davis. Okay, this one is 452 pages, $2.99, so excellent price. Also available on Kindle Unlimited. I'll read you the author's description. When bartender Jake Steele finds a portal into an abandoned building, he does what any bored guide would do. He walks through it. He finds himself in a game-like world where his life is measured in stats, and his violence is rewarded with experience points. Under the tutelage of an animal-butchering, horror-loving master, he learns to become an alchemist. He used to make drinks, but from now on, he's going to be mixing things that are far deadlier. So there we go. Okay, quick warning to anybody who's reading this. There's a ton of cursing and penis references. The cursing isn't particularly funny. It's just kind of the way the characters speak. In everyday language, there's also a lot of errors, like spelling errors in the particular case, that may bug you as a reader. This is from the author of Monster Spawn and Arcane Survivalist. So I was honestly expecting the quality to be a lot better. Monster Spawn had some issues. Arcane Survivalist, though, is like a really good LitRPG novel that it's like an apocalypse LitRPG story that I really enjoyed. This one, however, is probably my least favorite that Dec Davis has written so far. And I'll get into why. Let's see. I'll begin with my little description. Jake Steele feels unwanted and unneeded. His parents are dead. His best friend is leaving for college, and he doesn't have anyone else who miss him if he disappears. After discovering a portal to another world, however, he waits 2 weeks to jump in and discovers a world unlike any he's imagined. Okay, I kind of added the little 2 week part because it's not described in the premise, but it is a part of the story. Like I said, the first 6% of the novel is set up. It's backstory for the character, why he's okay with jumping into a portal to a new world, character development, and a lot of the backstory of like our real world doesn't really matter because he jumps into a whole new world and he stays there for like most of the novel. I'm not going to spoil things, but so a lot of that backstory isn't as useful as it might be. Once Jake is in the RPG world, he's there by the 7% mark, and he stays there for, like I said, most of the story. The world, the RPG world, the game world, is kind of vaguely described, unfortunately. That's one of the things I was surprised to see. Like I said, that's one of the issues, is that the world in general is not really that fleshed out, especially in the beginning. Like, the main character he goes to the portal, and this is the description of the world. It's literally, oh, there are mountains to the east, there's a forest to the north, or there's a road to the west, and a hut behind me. That's it. That's what you really get. And I really wanted to like this story because, one, Dec Davis, relatively good writer. Like I said, I liked the Arcane, the Arcane Survivalist story a lot. And I really wanted, especially because it kind of infers that there's a ton of crafting because this is the Steel Alchemist, and there is crafting in here. Unfortunately, it's not really great crafting. It's not horrible crafting or anything like that. It's just that if that's going to be your main theme, that's going to be your hook for the character, for the reader, you would expect the crafting to be really well detailed and interesting, and the game mechanics to be really fleshed out, and they just weren't in this particular story. Potion making in the novel, in the story of the game world, comes down to mixing two ingredients together. There is an herb with magical properties, and then there's a base to enhance those magical properties, which is just another ground up plant, and then there's water. And yes, I know that's 3 ingredients. But in the story, the author insists, and he insists again, that potion making only has 2. And again, that kind of brings me to one of the common issues with the story is that there's just a lot of errors. There's a lot of tiny errors, spelling errors, game mechanic errors. But kind of the one that's most striking to me and just like stood on my memory, like, how did you miss this error? Is that the author mistakenly changes the main character's name mid-story. At the beginning of the novel, the alchemist that's training the main character is called Carson, Carson. Then the name switches to Cason, Cason, then back to Carson, and then it stays Cason for the rest of the story. The name changes again later on at the end, but that's more of a plot twist that just made me roll my eyes, which is again another issue for me. And that's just just an example like, I feel like this should have had a couple more rounds of editing just to catch all these little tiny things that build up to like make the story less enjoyable. The game mechanics story are really pretty light, which is again surprising, coming from the author who usually does a relatively good job of like good detailed game mechanics. You mostly see them when the main character is identifying things like names of characters or plants, whatever, when he's crafting and when he looks at his character sheet. And again, this is something that bugged me just personally. The main character seems to level up almost after every fight scene, regardless of who he's fighting, how many of them are, how difficult or easy it is, whatever it is. And it's just kind of an inconsistency because the reader has to accept it because a lot of information isn't given. Like there are levels for some characters that are given, and then there are a lot that aren't. So you don't know exactly what the relative power difference between the main characters and the opponents. And even once the fight is over, if there is experience told, it's given in percentage. Like, oh, the main character's experience point bar went up by 9%. And I'm like, that doesn't mean much if you don't know the relative level difference between the characters. And when you have a level system like that, like that's kind of the point, to show the relative difference in power structure between the main character and its opponent. So I'm like, okay, that just is what it is. The story itself is decent. It's a coming of age story where Jake decides in a magical world what kind of person he's going to be. Like I said, there is some crafting, monster killing. He saves the day. And again, it's not a bad story necessarily. It's just not particularly amazing. And I expected more from the author. Overall, between the many errors in the story and the lackluster crafting, the novel just came out okay for me. And like I said, it's the weakest of the author's LitRPG stories. Like I said, one I would recommend from the same author would be The Arcane Survivalist, which has a lot of cool things in it. But this one, unfortunately, for Steel Alchemist, it gets a score of 5 out of 10. So there you go. Okay, on to our last review. It is Deadly Realm, Fighting for Freedom by Ryan Decker. Okay. This one is 84 pages, short story, 99 cents, well priced, available on Kindle Unlimited. I'll read you the author's description. Survival is the name of the game. Thrust into a world he could only imagine, Pax is forced to confront his fears in an altered reality. Once inside the game, the rules become deadly clear and there's only one way out. He thought being a die-hard gamer would give him an advantage, but battling monsters face to face leaves him questioning everything he once knew about himself. In a land filled with ogres, beasts, and dragons, survival becomes a desperate struggle. Outsized, outmaneuvered, and outpowered, Pax must rely on his wits to keep him alive. So there you go. Sounds pretty decent. The reality is not so much. This short story starts off decently enough. It really does. Pax and Tyler wins an opportunity to test out a new game that's also supposed to help autistic children like his brother. Why that matters, I don't know, but it's a thing in the story. Even better, he's getting paid for it. He's in the game by the 11% mark of the story, which is good. But it gets really weird after that. Like he's immediately, once he pops in the game, creates his character, he's immediately attacked by his game guide, which is a pretty girl that tells him if he dies in the game, he dies in real life. And just a heads up real quick, this is a short story, and I'm going to complain about a few things because they messed this whole story for me. So if you don't like spoilers, just know this novel gets a 5 out of 10 and you can skip ahead to the end. Okay, so just letting you know. Okay, so he's running the game. This pretty girl hits him and says, you need to man up, you need to hurry up and beat this game, because if you die in the game, you die in real life. And she probably says it better than that, but whatever. And then she also emphasizes, you need to hurry up and beat the game because unless you beat it, I'm stuck here forever. And, it's just there's a real emphasis on, there's a real effort, I should say, by the author to impose a sense of urgency and a sense of tension in the story, which is cool. It's just that there's no real reason for it. Like there's no reason for him throughout the entire novel that says he has to hurry up. Like there's literally nothing there that says if he doesn't do it, or there's no events that say, oh, if he hadn't hurried up, he would have lost everything. It's just, it's just the author trying to impose a sense of tension. Okay. From there, it's a mix of bland monster fights and a confusing attempt to implement a kind of Total Recall style tension where the main character isn't sure what's real, what's the game, and who's a part of a conspiracy that's never explained. The only RPG elements in the story are character sheets with stats. The main character is told repeatedly has to level up quickly or die, only there are no levels on that character sheet. I'm like, if you're going to set up game mechanics, you should probably use them. It almost feels like the author wrote the story and then at the end of each chapter, implemented a character sheet so that, and kind of reference it occasionally, to say, this is our, LitRPG. But because there are character sheets and the main character stats do gradually increase, it's like, I guess it is technically LitRPG. But other than that, there really aren't any RPG mechanics. There is I'll say there are notifications for items when he gets them. But that, I don't know that much as a learning names of things as it is like an RPG mechanic. Again, it's a short story, so you kind of have to modulate your expectations of it a little bit in the first place. But overall, the tension in the story felt forced for me. The early part of the game novel felt rushed, again, for no real reason whatsoever. And it just wasn't particularly entertaining for me. And again, some people in the reviews like the story, and that's cool. It's just for me, I'm like I have the Divine Dungeon. I have a bunch of the stories that were just so much amazing, so better. So I'm like, okay, this one not that awesome for me. Again, not poorly written or anything like that. It's just that it didn't do it for me. It felt very blah. So I'm like, it gets a score of 5 out of 10. Again, that's Deadly Realm, Fighting for Freedom. Gets the score of 5 out of 10. So there you go. That's it. Okay, that's it for the show, ladies and gentlemen. Again, 7 new little reviews for you guys, hit my mic, sorry. If you want to follow us, you can do so on Facebook, Twitter, on YouTube, Patreon. We'll have a link in the show notes for all those guys. And of course, if you want to support the podcast in any way, shape, or form, you can find out all the ways to do so at litrpgpodcast.com/support. And again, folks, thank you very much for hanging out with me, listening to me talk about the LitRPG stories that I love, the ones that I wasn't as amazed by, but just in general, just being supportive of, this thing that I do. And again, remember Sunday, it'll be November the 19th at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Come hang out with us on the YouTube live streaming thing we're going to do with a bunch of other LitRPG authors. I'm really hoping it's going to be fun. I hope to see all of you there in the chat room, throwing out questions, making fun of us. Again, there's going to be a 30-minute piece at the end where you guys are going to be able to ask all these authors any questions you want about their stuff or just things in general, what their opinions are. So hope to see you there. But until then, remember to go read some LitRPG. Goodbye, everybody. Have a good